Well, hello everyone. We are doing a very rare pre-recorded episode of Pink Flame of Liberty. So let's cue just the quick intro. All right, so what are we talking about and why am I doing this as pre-recorded? It's just a jam-packed day, and during the time I would normally live stream, I am going to be busy with some other things, but I wanted to get some content out because it had been such a busy week. I would like to remind you all that I do appreciate your support on Patreon, which is patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And also you can follow me on Twitter at Karen Ann Harlos. I really appreciate it. And if obviously everyone is watching this after the fact, I'm so used to being a live streamer. Super thanks are always welcome. And I did get a new patron last week. You know who you are. Thank you. Thank you very much. It really, really does encourage me to continue with my work. So what are we talking about? Of course, I went back to the old well of Matt Walsh because, I just love that. I do. You know it. And this time it's a little bit more lighthearted, but only in a way. Matt has been very dismissive in the past, and I don't know how much of it to take seriously, but it seems like quite a bit of mental health issues. And now, no doubt that people can be drama queens and exaggerate things. And sometimes, yes, you do just gotta pull yourself up by your pant straps and get your booty into gear. But I think he goes too far in diminishing the reality. I have often shared multiple times on this channel that when I was much younger and at different intervals as I got older, but this was much worse when I was younger, I suffered through very, very debilitating depression. And it is not so easy to just get up and do things and, just live life and fake it till you make it. Now, that is effective. Sometimes you need help to get there. It can be counseling, it can be medication, sometimes it can be sheer force of willpower. But I think he needs to have a little bit more compassion and understanding. So the subject of his show was allegedly a new TikTok viral trend I hadn't seen because my TikTok feed is basically filled with vocalists because I like listening to talented singers, jump scares, and cute dogs. That's about it for me. But this was a trend called bed rotting. The minute I heard it, I knew exactly what it was, but you may not. So let's go through this. I've got some clips queued up, so let's talk.
There's a new TikTok trend that could trigger depression in some people, and it's got a rather interesting name.
I know. Have you heard of this bed rotting?
No.
It's not something that sounds like something I would want to do, right? But I guess people want to do it, and it's actually the practice of lying in bed for long periods of time, sometimes for days, while binge watching TV or scrolling through social media and eating, of course. Now, influencers tout it as a form of self-care, but experts say the behavior is more typical of someone who's depressed.
Yeah, it definitely is the behavior of someone who's depressed, and I've done it. Now, can you take that too far? Certainly. But sometimes the best thing you can do is take a time out from life, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do it. And there's been times of great strain and stress in my life where the best thing for me was just to be alone and chill in bed for a couple days. Now, I wouldn't necessarily binge watch things, but maybe I have. I think I've done that before. Sometimes it's just sleeping. Sometimes you just need to get away. But let's see what Matt has to say about this.
It is not a healthy practice to become a voluntary invalid. Actually, it's better for a human, it turns out, to do things like move around and walk and maybe get some sun on occasion.
Notice how he takes it to the extreme. What I was referring to, and what I think most people are referring to, is not some long-term lifestyle. It's temporary. It's something you're doing to just pull yourself back together. You're not living in a cave like a troll who never sees the light of day. Like, you will get outside, but sometimes it's just a needed break. It's not becoming a voluntary invalid. Of course, if you're doing that, that's not good. But I don't think that's what most people are referring to. And it's certainly not what I'm referring to.
Have you ever heard of bed rotting? It's something that I learned about last week, but it's something I've been doing for years off and on. And I didn't know it had a name for it. I just thought it was like just depression. And I'm sure you've been doing this too. It's a form of self-care, but you shouldn't do it too often because apparently it can be laziness. But basically it's where you just sit or lay in bed all day. You can eat snacks, watch Max. But some of the girlies, they're like high-tech and high-end version where they like do skincare and some spa treatments just from their bed. Normally in the past, if I stayed in bed all day, I would feel so guilty. But now that I've learned that this is a thing, I'm no longer going to feel guilty for bed rotting.
And she explained it the way I understood it. And yeah, piling on guilt when you're already depressed, which is what Matt is doing. And there is some good advice that he gives. But I don't see anything wrong with, if you've become overwhelmed with the world, to retreat in for a little bit. I don't think that's so terrible.
Yes, why feel guilty for being an unwashed, sedentary bum? There's so many other unwashed sedentary bums after all. It's a thing. It's a whole thing. How bad can a thing be if it's a thing?
Again, misrepresentation. Nobody is suggesting becoming a recluse for life, of becoming a literal, what did he say, sedentary bum. This is about a pause. And yes, it can be self-care. As much as you might belittle that, Matt, I am just glad you are just so perfect and self-sufficient and never need anything like that. But all of us can't be gods like you.
Okay, so I don't want to hear any slander or any hate on this video because I know a lot of you guys, a lot of people in the comments are going to deal with something like this, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek into my life. This is what happens when I get particularly stressed or anxious or depressed. I cannot clean anything, get organized. I can't do it.
Can't do it. Can't do it. She's physically incapable somehow, in some way.
She didn't actually say she was physically incapable. I think she was dealing with getting the motivation, which is a mental thing. And I've been there too. And he's going to go on to say that sometimes you just got to force yourself. And once you start doing it, then you'll get the motivation. And that is true. But I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about being stuck as well. And perhaps her sharing that was her way to get unstuck. But sarcastically going up, physically incapable, but she was physically capable of shooting a video. That completely misses the point. Again, Matt, I am just glad that you are so perfect. But a lot of us can relate. And we can also relate to encouraging each other to get out of that rut. And maybe you think, that shaming and laughing at people is the way to do it. I hope you're making a lot of money off of other people's misery, but I don't know if that's exactly the right approach.
Again, this is a theme.
By the way, I'm fine. I want to clean my room really, really badly. I can't. And I know some of you are going to understand that, and some of you are just going to be like, get up and do it. Just do it if you want to. I can't. Does anyone know what I mean? I can't.
Yeah, some of us are going to say get up and do it, because that actually is the answer. Just get up and do it. Stop whining and do it. You can do it. You can. Shut up and do it. So that's why your room is filled to the brim with useless junk that you bought because you can't clean up after yourself? Well, I saw an Old Navy shopping bag. You somehow managed to go to Old Navy. Against all odds, you figured out how to walk out of your house, get into your car, drive to Old Navy, walk around Old Navy, buy all those clothes with your dad's credit card. You could do that. You weren't too physically immobilized and crippled by your depression to do that thing you wanted to do. And yet when it comes to things you don't want to do, somehow your depression turns into paralysis. What an interesting medical phenomenon.
In this lady's case, I don't think it's depression. I think it's hoarding syndrome. And that's something completely different. And it's a form of obsessive compulsive disorder. And Matt, I'm sorry if you don't understand that or you don't think it's real, but it's real. I think that particular case was a little bit different. That wasn't just, I'm feeling the blues or I'm having an episode of depression and, I didn't pick up for a couple weeks. That's a bit more. And, I'm not going to make fun of somebody who has that. I can't imagine it. I've known a hoarder in the past and it is such a compulsion and they literally are mentally incapable without some intensive therapy of being able to take care of that for themselves. I tried to help this person, had to give up. I just wasn't qualified. It is definitely a mental health issue.
I'm crippled by depression when I don't want to do things. Is it depression crippling you or are you just lazy? That's called being lazy. That's like the definition of lazy.
When we're dealing with the hoarding situation or OCD, that's actually an anxiety disorder. A lot of times something very traumatic happened in their childhood. And mocking that and just calling them lazy isn't helpful. I'm sure it gets you a lot of clicks and yuckity yucks, but that's really sad. It's sad that you're doing it, but I feel really bad for that lady and hope she gets the help that she needs.
Actually, it's not a very interesting phenomenon because, again, you're just lazy. You may be depressed or you may not be, but one thing you definitely are is lazy. Let me ask you this. You say that you can't clean your room. What if I walked up to you with a giant bag filled with $10 million in cash and I said that I would give it to you if you cleaned your room? $10 million right here. I will give it to you right now if you clean the room. I bet you'd find a way to do it, wouldn't you? See, this is the difference between things like depression, ADHD, anxiety, and something like cancer or diabetes. Because if I offered you $10 million to not have cancer anymore, you couldn't take me up on the offer no matter how badly you wanted to. But if I offered you $10 million to no longer be crippled by depression, you would magically find a way.
Oh, you had the big insight that things that are different are not the same. Golf clap. If you've ever watched some of those severe hoarding shows, there are parents who legitimately love their children, but their children have gone pretty much no contact because they just can't deal with the disgustingness of their childhood home that their parents are still rotting in or their parent is still rotting in. And even the idea and they have severe motivation to want a relationship with their child and are still frozen and can't do it. Now, if you put that much money in front of them, I don't know. I haven't seen a show on that, but I've seen things in which they have an internal motivation and still can't do it. Some of these people lose everything that matters to them. It's not just laziness. In some circumstances, it might be, but it is this broad brush patronizing attitude that is just super, super annoying.
This is an important point. One of the great curses of our age is that people have been convinced that they don't have agency, that they are not rational, conscious agents making choices and acting freely in the world. The medicalization of every human foible we talked about at the beginning, every bad feeling, every unpleasant emotion plays a big part of this. People don't want to do things or they don't feel incentivized to do them, and then they're convinced that because of some kind of invisible disease, they can't do those things. This is the main reason why I object to depression being categorized as a disease. Depression is a feeling. It's a thought process. You decide how much power it has over your life. You decide that.
You are hearing the voice of a man who has never been chronically depressed in that way. And again, I truly am happy for him that he hasn't had to struggle with that. It is not merely a choice. Now, like what most things Matt says, it's not entirely false. And what he says may be the case in some circumstances. But this universalization of it's just this way, you're just lazy, you're just deficient. And here's the fact, people who are really having an issue, they hear messages like that, and that just pulls them even further down, even perhaps to self-cancellation. It is not the best way to deal with things in a blanket way. People who are close to that person, perhaps therapists, perhaps parents, loved ones, friends, are much more in a position to know what kind of reality is being dealt with. Now, whether you want to call mental health issues a disease, they certainly are a disorder. It's not normal or baseline. It's not functional. So it's an issue. Whether you want to call it a disease or not, no, I don't equate it to the same thing as having cancer or, any other, having multiple sclerosis. I get it. It is a different category. As I said, big discovery, Matt, that things that are different are not the same.
You can get out of your bed and clean your room. You can do the thing you say you cannot do. You absolutely can. There is nothing physically preventing you. You choose not to.
It is not merely a choice. Some of it is volitional. And there have been times when I have willpowered my way out of things. And there's been times I haven't. And it's not one size fits all. And I do find the way Matt just completely craps on mental health issues not helpful. But I also find the other extreme not helpful, where it's just complete coddling. As is often the case, the truth is somewhere in between. Well, anyway, that's it for now. I wanted to get that show under my belt, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit subscribe, and of course, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. Until we talk next time, I hope you have an awesome day. Mi guapas de libertad.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business, not because they want to